So when you guys think of, the church community, and you're in a larger church, and so this may be different than it would be to a smaller church, but how do you feel that the Pure Desire groups there at Faith Chapel have had an impact on your church as a whole, or maybe even the community around you?
I would just say that in the 2.5 years that I've been here, when I came in, there was two groups running for men and there was three groups running for women. So to have um, 11 groups, 11 groups going, I would say that there's just an increased awareness and understanding and a willingness to be a part of the process.
Yeah.
I know our senior pastor, he's an incredible leader, and just has a really, really humble but also wise perspective. And so he's been consistent in championing the processes and creating these safe places where healing can happen. And so I would, I think the fact that that we've had four other pastors jump in and lead groups.
Mm.
We've got a fifth pastor who works in, no, a fifth and a sixth, two pastors who work in our Native American communities, and our native uh, create space within their ministries to
Mm.
also bring in group process material. So just seeing more uh, leaders say, yes, oh, this is valuable, this is beneficial, I want to be a part of this, I want to give this to the men that I'm with. And then we have an invitation right now from our, yeah, there's just an invitation from one of our women's pastors to bring the process to the women's ministry. And so that relationship and partnership is being formed and discussed. Even bringing out Nick Stumbo to last, was it last year, Nick, or the year before?
I think we were
Uh,
2 years ago. Last year, you had Rich and Ashley out to do some
that's
training.
right.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
Rich, Ashley, and Robert Vandermeer came last year, but
That's right.
the fall before that, so fall of 22, one of our pastors who does the marriage ministry, was like, hey, who's a great speaker and who can really communicate and talk about intimacy and healthy sexuality. And I was like, oh man, absolutely, without question, it would be Pure Desires. And I think Nick Stumbo would be an incredible fit. And so we were able to bring out Nick, and he spoke to over 250 guys and about 18 to 20 ladies, and he had a bunch of warriors there.
Mm.
And so just being able to create these spaces where people can hear um, a holistic, biblical, clinical, neurologically informed, relational discipleship ministry that's proven, that's international. There's very few. There's no other place to get the congruency that Pure Desires has discovered from decades of blood, sweat, and tears. And people pouring their heart and soul and life into helping others heal. And like so I mean it. And then lastly, I would just say one of the other impacts that I got to be a part of personally, and I was invited to speak at an anti-human trafficking event from a person who has a survivor care process here in the church. So she invited me to come speak, but she's like, Robert, I really would like you to speak from the perspective of being a buyer,
Mm.
of being an addict. So I said yes, and showed up, and I'm getting into this room full of survivors. These are ladies who have been trafficked,
Mm.
who have been, super wounded, super marginalized. They've not been, their dignity's been totally hurt. But she wanted me to tell my perspective, so I shared my story and how Jesus and the church and Pure Desires just gave me a new life. And there was good receptivity, built some great relationships. Well, then she invited me back. She invited me to an anti-trafficking symposium that was happening at a state level, that was organized by Montana Department of Health and Human Services, and she connected me to the facilitator of that, and I was able to go to a symposium where there was probably there was 35 people in the room. There were nonprofits, and there were multiple different survivor care nonprofits and churches and organizations. And again, they wanted me to share how human trafficking was affecting the church. And my perspective is that as a man who engaged with unwanted behavior and my own cyclical behavior, and like as I really studied this out and dove into research that was available, the trafficking is inseparable from the pornography industry.
Yeah.
And there's just no way around that. And so I shared my story again, and there was great receptivity. I met the program director for the governor of Montana. She was there, and she was actually leading groups through a different ministry. And so we connected, and she was leading ladies groups, and she asked lots of questions about Pure Desire, and I shared with her for an hour and a half just the different nuances of and the specific ways that Pure Desires is different. And so we had a great conversation. And the next day, she told me that she actually had a document that was already in print on the governor's desk, and she was getting ready to present a different sexual healing ministry to him for a grant. And she changed that the next day to Pure Desires and advocated for Pure Desires to be in that place.
Wow.
And so the governor signed in a statewide grant so that any nonprofit or church in the entire state of Montana can have access to $2,200 to start a Pure Desire ministry in their church or their nonprofit. And, that was a gift that I got to be a part of because, because Jesus transformed my life.
Yeah.
And because the church is a place where healing occurs, and because Pure Desires has this biblical, clinical, neurologically informed, holistic model that doesn't marginalize the different dimensions of being human.
Yeah.
It takes the mind, the body, the spirit, and a person's past and present and future, and it just in a very comprehensible way gives the capacity for a person to personalize and understand their denial structures, their addictive cycle, and the wounds that they're medicating, and then a way of escape and a way for Jesus to heal and a community to live in. And so I have a coherent narrative today because of Pure Desires, and other people have greater capacity to connect with Pure Desires because I got to tell my story, a story I was given. It was a gift.
Yeah.
So
we're in front of the Montana governor, Miss Montana.
Hey,
we're big in Montana.
We're big time. No, and I want to say this, man. I people maybe not see this, on Zoom, but you are a large individual, and you are kind of this presence. And I think that it would be easy to look at you and not think that you are in tune with your emotions and that you can experience. I love seeing people who have been in recovery for an extended period of time who still can't handle telling it without getting emotional. It's clear that you have internalized the work of Jesus in your life and that this ministry got to be a part of it. And I think that speaks to how powerful our story is. And I know we've talked about it already, but it's not just that Faith Chapel runs groups and that there are people who come there and go through it, but it is your individual story that ended up in front of survivors and then ended up, talking to people in the local government. And it is just a powerful tool that we can use and Annie, you spoke to that too, just how meaningful your story is when you get these opportunities to share it.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Annie, about the impact you're seeing because of Pure Desire groups in your church?
Oh my goodness. The impact. First of all, marriages are being saved.
Yeah. Let's go.
That's the big one. And that the more we talk about it, the more we normalize, if you can say that word, unwanted sexual behavior, people are going to talk about it. They're going to come forward. They're going to say, I struggle with this. And because of Robert's story, and the things that he went through, those are the things that have become his sword.
Yeah.
And he's using that sword to draw other men. And he is dynamic. He's got tattoos all over. He's a man's man, and you would think that he wouldn't have a story like that, but he does, and he's willing to share it openly. And so I think that's why we are very successful, because Robert was he had a life, and God made it to where God wants him to use his life, what happened to him. And he's doing that. He's being obedient. And so, thank you, boss. I appreciate you.
Hey, I love serving with Annie. And just to conclude and answer just your question, Nick, a couple more ways about the impact in the community. I just want to make it like really clear that that it would have never happened like without, Patrick Carnes, and then Dr. Ted and Diane, and without Rich and Deneen, and then Nick and Amy and Trevor and his bride. And so there was this incredible gathering of people that has gone before us. What I love is that I'm not a pioneer. This Pure Desires isn't a pioneer ministry. They're pioneering and like entering and taking new territory, and they're entering new countries, and they're, taking this process into new languages. But we're walking on a path that others have walked. And secondly, like Nate Petzel and Jenny Petzel, our senior pastor, and their parents, and Nate's parents, Steve and Caroline, like Steve and I were meeting, and he was telling Nate that he thought I would be a good pastor for this position if it worked out. And so I'm incredibly grateful for them and their leadership, because they were willing to say, let's create these safe places. Let's like address this. Let's bring this to the light, and let's advocate for the person who's been affected, just like the person who's addicted. And let's advocate for them. And then thirdly, I would just say that we promote Pure Desire counseling. We believe that facilitating full disclosures is best done through Pure Desires and according to their best practice and recommendations with their counselors. If that can't be done with a professional in our area, if that can't be done, then Annie and I have facilitated those. But Annie was at my full disclosure, like the guy who introduced me to group, Curtis Bevolden, like he's home now. I got to be a part of his celebration of life in January, and Curtis and Annie were there when I did my full disclosure with my wife. Like I wouldn't even be sitting in this chair if it wasn't for Annie Burt holding space for and hoping for the healing that she knew was possible for my wife and for our marriage, and without you guys. So I just want to make that really really clear. Like it's just such a gift to be in this chair and to be in this space. And we have in terms of the groups that I named that are in operation, about 11. I have a list in front of me also of we have 1, 2, 3. There's like 4 other groups happening in different parts of the country, because we got to be a part of like resourcing them. So South Carolina, good friends down there.
Cool.
There's stuff happening in Belgrade, in Butte, Montana. So it's just the impact is incredible. It's such a blessing.
I just feel
so
like
cool.
I need to say this. Like I apologize to Faith Chapel when we steal Robert and Annie to be on our staff. I just want them to hear it publicly for us. That's where we're headed.